Whoa, what's good, family? What it do? What it do? It's me, Coach 67 Sports TV. Shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC, Lions Den Broadcasting Community. Shout out to M Vision Photography and Video. You did an excellent and awesome job on the 2025 Southern University Blue versus Gold Spring Game Post Game Reaction Part 2. It wasn't just your ordinary spring game, but it was a movie. Shout out to the Louisiana All American Sports Network. And shout out to the greatest university in the world, the Southern University, home of the mighty Jaguars. In this particular live stream, I'm going to talk about a few different topics. I'm going to talk about a topic I already talked about. However, I'm going to bring it up again tonight. How only one HBCU football player was drafted to the 2025 NFL draft. We also going to talk about former Southern University Jaguar that seemed to have a little bit of an issue with my constructive criticism. This particular individual got drafted into another football league. And I'm also just, whatever y'all want to talk about in terms of Q&A session, open topic, whatever you want to call it. Before I actually get deep into, this particular live stream, major shout out to my brother Jared Lemon Green. Appreciate you for your continued support, bro. The leader of the Southern Baller show we do on his channel every Sunday. Man, y'all go over to my brother's channel, Jared Lemon Green. Go to his channel, check it out. Every Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, the Southern Baller Show. We talk about football all across the board, so go check him out. I want to just throw a major shout out to all the Facebook groups I'm in. Major shout out to Roughing the Swag with Avis Heats. Major shout out to Swag and Sports Talk. Major shout out to Jaguar Sports Plaza. Major shout out to Jag Doubt. Major shout out to Jaguar Nation. Major shout out to What's Up SU. Major shout out to Swag Beef. Major shout out to HBCU Alumni United. Major shout out to Swag and the Food Podcast. Now I don't do that. They're on YouTube channel here on YouTube, but they also have their own Facebook group. Go check them out. And of course, my Facebook group, Southern University Sports and Swag Nation, HBCU Excellence. Hey, if y'all in a Facebook like I am, check out the Facebook group. And for the most part, you got a lot of, Jags in that particular group, like myself, my brother Steve Wells. Man, y'all go check it out, But in this particular live stream, what I'm going to talk about is the first topic is the fact that only one individual was drafted in a 2025 NFL draft. Let me rephrase that. Only one HBCU player. And to me, my thoughts and my questions are, all right, if only one is drafted, then cool. But, my point of view, my perspective is, was only one worthy of being drafted? Was only one drafted, because the system is structured as the NFL was only going to allow one to be drafted because, we saw what transpired with the whole Shedeur Sanders situation. And, at the end of the day, I mean, can't nobody tell me Shedeur wasn't buck broken or at least attempted to buck break him from a mental standpoint. There was no reason if he fell from the first round to the second round, cool. But for him to fall from the first round to the fifth round, that's a whole nother story. And then in addition to that, the fact that that same system is the same system that, for years there was no HBCU players drafted in the NFL draft. Now, this particular season, even though, a handful of individuals had said this already, you know, many people felt like Carson Vincent from Alabama and the offensive tackle. He was drafted in the 5th round with the 141st pick by the Baltimore Ravens. Major congratulations to Carson Vincent. But was Carson Vincent the only individual that was worthy of being drafted in the 2025 NFL draft? I mean, I don't know. I know some people will be like, man, coach, you always crying with the HBCUs, and if they would have been good enough to get drafted and they would have got drafted. Yeah, that sounds all well and good, but let's use some critical thinking skills. If they'd have had multiple players that was good enough to get drafted in the NFL draft, hypothetically speaking, would they have drafted multiple players? I mean, that's food for thought. And then in addition to that, we're just going to say hypothetically speaking, is somebody like Irv Mulligan, is he good enough to make an NFL roster? And if he's good enough to make an NFL roster, then why was somebody like Irv Mulligan not drafted? So I'm just using him for an example. There's no way you could tell me that Carson Vincent, at least in my humble opinion, was the only one worthy of being drafted in the 2025 NFL draft. I mean, that's just my personal thoughts and feelings. I mean, don't get me wrong. We have multiple HBCU players that signed contracts as undrafted free agents. However, the fact that only one was drafted, come on, man, I'm not buying that, because I know the country that we live in. I know the gross double standards. And I saw this on X, which is formerly known as Twitter. And this woman, she made an excellent statement in terms of her commentary. She was talking about that was part of the reason why the NCAA power structure, that's the reason why PWI had to come take Deion from Jackson State, because they didn't want young black men to think that going to HBCUs was a better option than going to a PWI. And you cannot tell me, don't get me wrong, Colorado University has benefited financially from his presence. But to me, it was just more than just money as far as I'm concerned. And despite what people may say, what people think, I honestly, fervently believe that it wasn't a coincidence that, that a PWI Power 5, I mean, we knew they was going to come calling at some point eventually. But I mean, it kind of is what it is. So to me, I think it was more than just financial that Deion Sanders was lured away from Jackson State. And at the end of the day, cannot tell me there wasn't more than one player worthy of being drafted in the 2025 NFL draft. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but that's just, my personal perspective and my take on things. So, it's good food for thought. The next topic is, I call it controversial, but I really don't see it as being controversial. I'm sorry, before I get into this next topic, that's the link to my Facebook group, for all my members of Jaguar Nation. If you want to join the Facebook group, you're more than welcome. It's open invitation. But the next topic is an individual that had a little bit of an issue of me saying, hey, I think he should have stayed at Southern University. I think his playing career would have been better. Trey Lang, with the 63rd overall pick in the CFL draft, he was selected from Eastern Michigan. So congratulations to Trey Lang. I wish him well. I hope he's successful in the CFL, that he goes on to have a productive CFL career. Maybe it can catapult him into the NFL. But, whatever he does, I wish him well in his future endeavors. Hopefully he has a excellent and productive football career, whether it's strictly in the CFL, whether he can parlay that into an NFL career, so on and so forth. So despite what people might think, I wish Trey Lang well. And Adrian Crook, shout out to Adrian Crook. I can't pull that up, man. I ain't gonna even lie. But basically, he's saying, give the middle finger, get a bird to thee. And of course, when he say thee, I'm assuming he's talking about JSU. So, yeah. But, in terms of Trey Lang, I wish him well. Hopefully he does well. Whoop-de-whoop-de-woo, so on and so forth. But in terms of the next topic, the last topic that I have, planned, more than anything, it's supposed to be just a Q&A session. But my question was, me and somebody was talking, and it was saying in terms of like current Southern University football, whether it's somebody presently, whether it's somebody in the past, who I think had the biggest impact on Southern University football, like in 2025. And, I'm like, I don't know, that's a good question. And he was saying, basically, he said A.W. Mumford. And I'm like, I think that's a good answer, but truthfully speaking, even after A.W. had, going on to glory, this, that, the third, multiple coaches after him, I would say that the person that has the biggest impact on the day's Southern University football product, even though he hasn't been a head coach at Southern University for quite some time. Salute to my brother Jay Good. Salute to your fam. I'll say the individual that probably has the biggest imprint on. Salute to my brother Big Joe Townsend, standing on LDBC business you did. But like I was saying, I think the individual that has the biggest impact on Southern University football in terms of past impact, I'm going to say it's Pete Richardson, because I know some people are going to be like, well, is it an athletic director? Is it a head coach? Is it the players? Is it the fan base? I think all these people play a role in it collectively, is to make up one collection of Jaguar Nation. But in terms of the things I talk about, like on my channel, the things I talk about with C. Wells on his channel, Swag Talk, I'll probably see the person that has the biggest impact on that, I'll probably definitely say is Pete Richardson. I know some people might agree, other people might disagree, but even after Coach Richardson, like Dawson Odoms, he had won the SWAC championship, and guess what? People still was talking about Pete Richardson. You know what I'm saying? So I think in 2025, I think until somebody could kind of eclipse the legend that was the dean of the SWAC, I'll probably say he is the biggest imprint and impact on current Southern University football in 2025. And even though he's no longer on the sideline, he's no longer coaching. Basically, when we talk about Southern University football, I mean, pretty much we talk about players that played under Pete Richardson, coaches that coached under Pete Richardson, so on and so forth. Whether we talk about the late great Sean Wallace, may he rest in peace. Whether we talk about people like Eric Randall, Quincy Richard, Bryant Lee, uh, Leonard Tillery, even though Tillery played for talking Melvin Williams Jr. We recently had a conversation about Victor Ike. And that's one thing I want to bring up too. I think Edwin Moore, salute to Edwin Moore and everybody in the chat. Doc Williams, who was the athletic trainer at Southern University for a lot of years. And I know I kind of abruptly switched gears, but I just kind of want to address this. Doc Williams was the athletic trainer at Southern University for a lot of years. And I had his athletic training class. It was a 400 level course for individuals that majored in physical education like myself. There you learn how to wrap a knee, wrap an ankle, wrap a shoulder, wrap multiple body parts, so on and so forth. And in addition to that, just basic stuff you would need to know as a coach. And, he always talked about him not being big on Gatorade. He was saying, I don't know how Jay Good would feel about it, how Big Joe Townsend feel about it, but he was saying Doc Williams always felt like if you were a college athlete, to prevent constant cramping and dehydration and that type of thing, he felt like every college athlete or just athlete in general, especially if you're going to perspire a lot, to prevent you from getting cramps, he felt like you should drink 2 gallons of water every day. And I'm like, dang, 2 gallons is a lot. He wasn't big on Gatorade. He was big on water. Water was his thing. Doc Williams wasn't big on the water. Adrian Crook said LSU doesn't mess with it either. Yeah, water. And he said, I still do it to this day. And I'm not gonna lie, Doc was real old school. He didn't believe in like drinking Gatorade. No Gatorade. So Gatorade, they didn't have Gatorade. So you had to drink water. He believed you should drink 2 gallons of water every day. And when you come on the sideline for a break or whatever, and you had water to rehydrate. There was no Gatorade. So Victor Ike played, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Victor Ike, what year he was at Southern, like what? Let me see. I think Victor Ike was like 05 or whatever. Jay Good said, I still drink a gallon or 2 a day. Gallons is hell of a go. I'm not gonna lie. Hey, I used to see Southern players all the time, like Mike Hayes. They come to class with these gallon jugs. And I'm like, man, y'all gonna drink all that water? He was like, yeah, bro, we gotta drink all that water, you know what I'm saying? So Doc was big. Salute to my brother, Brent Fox. Y'all go check him out on his channel. With his show, it's just me starring Brent Fox. Salute, brother, just showing support. I appreciate you, Brent Fox. But and Jay Good, he still drank 2 gallons of water a day. That's a hell of a goal. But I'm not gonna even lie. Those Southern players used to carry those gallon jugs around and be constantly drinking water during class, whatever. And I'm like, man, hey, carrying that gallon jug, bro, like, hey. So it was a big thing. So we talked about like the injuries Victor Ike had, and it was saying the reason why he could never stay healthy was because there was no Gatorade accessible on the sidelines. And Big Joe said 2 gallons. He said, my teammates be tipsy at practice. but I'm not gonna lie, like, he didn't. Yeah, hey, that was another thing. No ice. Hey, this used to be like room temperature gallons. Hey, that's an excellent point, Adrian Crook. Hey, that was room temperature gallons of water. Not like, hey, you could put ice put in the fridge or whatever. Those who used to be walking around campus with that room temperature gallon of water. And, they didn't have Gatorade accessible to rehydrate. And they say as a result, like Victor Ike, he wouldn't drink enough water. He wouldn't drink water, whatever. So he constantly used to cramp up and constantly used to get hurt. So, a lot of people have been saying that in the chat the last couple of days, But, a guy that I was cool with, in fact, at the time, since I was a physical education major, I was cool with a handful of Southern University players. And, a couple of players told me, Keaton Davis was one of them in particular, they were saying that basically they thought like Victor Ike, I guess he didn't like to get hit. He used to run out of bounds too much for their liking. So they wanted him benched or whatever. But people in the chat was saying that basically he kept getting hurt. That's why Coach Richardson not necessarily benched him, but I guess kind of kept him from playing in terms of the fact that he kept getting hurt because he wouldn't properly hydrate. So he didn't play for a good portion of the season. And then at the end of the season, he ended up playing in the Bayou Classic, and he had this long run, but he ended up getting hurt. And basically that pretty much was like the end of his career. So that was kind of like the big ongoing conversation in the chat section of yesterday's live stream. So in terms of that, no, he wasn't a bulldozer. He was, I was saying that, and basically what Edwin Moore was saying was he felt like Steve Wolford didn't avoid a whole lot of contact. And I'm like, see, my perception of it probably going to be different because at the time I was in high school, and the starting running back when I was in high school at Assumption was at the time Brad Hill. Brad Hill ended up going on to be the starting running back at Grambling. And the running back on our freshman team was Brandon Jacobs. So Brandon Jacobs was the starting running back for freshman and JV, and Brad Hill was our starting varsity running back. Even though, Brandon Jacobs played varsity on special teams, but like Brad Hill was the man at the time. So a freshman wasn't going to beat out a junior. And in my mind, when I used to see like all the running backs I played with at Assumption were pretty much all power backs. And he said Brad was the man. You remember when y'all came to Baker? Well, no, actually, they came to Baker. I was at Southern by that point. So that was like my freshman year at Southern, his senior year at Assumption. So I had already made it to Assumption by that. I mean, I already left Assumption and made it to Southern by that point where he was a senior at Assumption. But I'm not gonna lie, he was a man. He said, man, they had 300 yards at halftime. Oh no, I'm not gonna lie. Hey, when I played at Assumption, like it wasn't nothing for like Brad Hill, Brandon Jacobs, whoever was the feature back. It wasn't a big deal for them to run the ball 40 times in a game. So that's why when I used to see Steve Wolford, I'm like, man, this dude always slipping down, tripping down, running out of bounds, falling down. So, Edwin Moore was saying that basically he didn't feel like he overly avoided contact. And I'm like, in my opinion, to me, running backs like Gerald Holmes and Ryan Lewis were even smaller than Steve Wolford. And I felt like they didn't avoid contact. I'm not saying they didn't avoid contact at all, but I felt like he avoided contact the most. And realistically, my stance was I feel like truthfully speaking, I felt like Steve Wolford and Victor Ike were kind of like parallel. If they felt like Victor Ike didn't like to get hit, I'm like, I think had they switched time frames in which they played, especially under Pete, the way we had the conversation with Kendrick Grimes, the way, they pretty much is backed by committee, whereas Coach Richardson, it wasn't no backed by committee. It was whoever the feature back gonna get the most touches. And that was kind of, the way they approach. Oh, no, I'm not gonna lie. I see high school football games all the time, Adrian Crook. I'm going to keep it a buck. I don't feel like these boys, they smacking stuff like we were in the 90s, And, somebody asked that on a live stream the other night when I was on Sewell Swag Talk. They were saying, like, why y'all always talking about the 90s? I'm like, look, whether we talking about football, whether we talking about music, movies, pop culture, to me, the 90s was like, I'll probably say the best years of my life, even though, I'm an 80s baby, but still in all, like the 90s, man, hey, because I was looking at some of like the popular music in the 90s, especially like 98. You know, whether we were talking about No Limit, Cash Money, talking about the movies, even the gospel music. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, some of the gospel music that like was banging in the late 90s, like 98, 99. Some of those songs I still listen to this day. So at the end of the day, like people talk about, man, coach, y'all always talking about the glory years of Southern in the 90s. And then just the glory years of Southern University in the 90s. Truthfully speaking, I think it was just the glory years just in life in general, you know what I'm saying? My personal opinion. You know, I tell people this all the time. 1998 was like, to me, like the best year of my life. But, you know, it is what it is. But in terms of, you know, the running backs, I felt like, you know, they talked about Victor Ike. You know, the players told me like they felt like he avoided contact or he didn't want to get hit. You know, some people were saying that it was part of him not hydrating properly and he was injury prone. You know, the players at the time told me they felt like he didn't want to get hit. I think it can kind of be a combination of the two things. You know, two things could be true simultaneously. But, you know, in terms of like, you know, what I was saying earlier, but in terms of imprint, you know, I think that's the reason why I think Coach Richardson still to this day is like, you know, very influential in terms of, you know, Southern University football because, you know, I think even though I think Coach Graves is doing an excellent job, I think Coach Graves and his staff doing an excellent job. I still think even him, he's still kind of coaching that, chasing that Dean of the SWAC legend of Coach Pete Richardson. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how things play out this particular season. As a Southern University fan, I'm encouraged by what I saw in a Blue versus Gold spring game. I think the only thing that really kind of was like eye-opening the fact that they had no special teams whatsoever. That really was by design, despite what people think. So, I mean, we'll see how things play out in terms of this coming season. But, you know, I'm pretty encouraged, you know, in terms of I think Southern gonna have a pretty good team. The offense has kind of been an issue the last few years, and it looks like the offense was just kind of clicking on all cylinders in a Blue versus Gold spring game. So we'll see how how things gonna play out this particular season when it comes to Southern and just the whole SWAC in general, you know, because I see people making predictions. Uh I see people making predictions in terms of too early to make predictions. And truthfully speaking, you know, I think the East is more fluid. I mean, let me phrase it. I think there's more parity in the West. The East, we kind of, you know, it kind of is what it is. I think I kind of expect the top three teams to kind of remain the top three teams. Salute the motivation to be a millionaire. He says, salute, coach. Do you think SU wins the SWAC? Like I said the other day on SWAC Talk with C. Wells, I think it's too early to really determine that. But truthfully speaking, I would say yes. And I know some some JSU peeps gonna come through and be like, oh man, you know, you're an SU homer, this, that, and the third, whoop de whoop de whoop. If the issue for Southern the last few years has been the offense, and it seems as if Southern has corrected that issue this year, of course they have to play the same way during the regular season that they played in the Blue versus Gold spring game. But I'm not gonna lie, at certain points during the Blue versus Gold spring game, during the scrimmage itself, it looked like a glorified 7-on-7. You know, once they took Kelby Givens out and there really was no pass rush, I'm not gonna lie, the offense just kind of went up and down the field to be keep it a buck. So at the end of the day, yeah, you know, I think Henry Miller defense gonna do what Southern defense has been doing the past few years. You know, as long as you got Kelby Givens, and then in the secondary you got Herman Brister the third. You got Herman Brister the third. You got Horatio Johnson. You know, those two really gonna anchor your secondary. And I don't know if it's the scheme that Southern runs, if it's the players. I think it's a combination of the two. And that's the reason why Southern defense is so good. You know, Jay Good was saying I saw McCoy, JSU got an offer from SU. Interesting. Yeah, I don't lie, that is that is pretty interesting, you know. So I mean, it's gonna kind of, I don't know, it's gonna kind of be interesting to see how things unfold. But I mean, I think Southern major issue right now is special teams. I mean, I don't know if they have a punter, if they have a kicker, if they have a deep snapper, if they have a punt and kick returner. But I think if you can get you a kicker like maybe like a Carlos Leach or another Joshua Griffin type kicker, and you could get you another Ruben Beauplance type punter, or a Matt Bushart type punter, or even a Lionel Nicholas type punter, and then you could get you a dynamic punt and kick returner like a Willie Quinn, like a Ezra Landry, like a Fred Bill and King Sparks. Realistically, I think at that point, I think you'll be a complete team in all three phases of the game. That might be asking too much, because I know at some point you're going to have a weakness somewhere along the lines. But if you could get all of those things going, man, Southern will be a problem to deal with, because, like I said, the quarterback situation, you know, me and C. Wells, we talked about this the other night. You know, I was saying how Marcus Jacoby was the worst quarterback I saw at Southern. He was like, man, you think Marcus Jacoby was worse than Harold Blood and Noah Barton? And I'm not gonna lie, I'm like, yeah, both of them were bad. But the thing I don't think C. Wells really took into consideration. Hell, look at the offensive lines that Marcus Jacoby had. Marcus Jacoby had good offensive lines. You know, he had good fullback with Jermaine West, good tailback with Steve Warford, and he had a good defense led by mostly Ricky Arvey at the time. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, I know Harold Blood, in terms of his receiving core, you know, he had Jalen Howard, he had August Petrie III, he had Cassius Allen, he had Chandler Whitfield. Like, damn, you got four, like, real good receivers. Realistically, you know, I'm sure a lot of Southern University quarterbacks would have liked to have that quartet of receivers. And then you got to add Darren Morris to the mix with that too. So, like, you had 5 real good receivers. But, I mean, that offensive line and that running game Marcus Jacoby had, man, they pretty much carried Marcus Jacoby. And then the thing about it was, I remember the one year where Marcus Jacoby and Matt Cornblath was David. I don't know if y'all remember George Steinbrenner, who used to be the owner of the New York Yankees. That was his nephew, who's the starting quarterback at Grambling. I think the only Bayou Classic I remember with 2 white quarterbacks. And, man, I'm not going to lie, both of them were trash. It was so bad that Southern really couldn't move the ball. I don't know if C-Wells remember this. At one point, Southern intercepted a pass, and when a Grambling player was tackling him, he tried to fumble the ball forward so the player in front of him could pick it up and run it for a touchdown. Jay Good said he was surrounded by talent, managed the game. Meanwhile, Sam backed him up, and Hayes dipped. No, I'm not gonna lie. You know, we talked about that the other night on Swag Talk. You know, C. Wells was at school at the time. I felt like when, you know, we talked about who should have been starting. I say Sam George should have been starting. He said Sam George even admitted himself, or would admit if you asked, that he wasn't doing what he should have been doing, like in terms of, I guess, off the field. So to C. Wells, he felt like Lionel Hayes should have been starting. And, you know, the reason why I said there's no way in the heck he should have started, I knew somebody that worked with my dad. My dad, he always had season tickets. He always had season tickets. And he knew somebody that really was like close to the program, special seats during the season. And he was saying, man, the only reason why at the time he felt like Pete The only reason why Pete started Jacoby was because, from a political standpoint, he transferred from La Tech. He felt like, more than anything, he felt like it was more a race thing, and that's the reason why Lionel Hayes and Sam George didn't start. But talking to C. Wells, he felt like Lionel Hayes should have been a starter, and I think Lionel Hayes knew he should have been. Both of them, either one of them should have been starting over Marcus Jacoby. It was so bad. I remember one night, Southern came to Nichols, where I'm from in Assumption Parish. Actually, it's closer to Nichols than it is Southern, and they didn't want him to. The wide receivers, they didn't want Marcus Jacoby to start so bad. They tried to sabotage him that night. And a few good passes he did make, they would intentionally drop past us. And of course, we found this out after the fact. Marcus Jacoby went to the paper. And at the time, it ain't like high-speed internet now, where you could, get high speed. Everybody had dial-up connections. In fact, we didn't even have internet at the time. And yeah, I ain't gonna lie, Mark Orlando did like Jacoby, and Adrian Cook was saying he needed more play action. Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, he did need more play action to keep it a buck. But I think and realistically, from what I heard, they say the reason why Williams started over Levy was because the offensive staff liked Williams more than Levy. And I'm like, man, dude, Levy clearly was the starter. And then once he did become the starter, Southern took off. And then after that, he started getting injury prone. But but back to back to that situation with Marcus Jacoby, I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, I see why C. Wells was saying that he don't think he was the worst, but I'm not gonna lie, if players get intentionally trying to drop passes to sabotage you because they don't want you to start, and then in addition to that, when defensive players get turnovers and they trying to do like some holy roller type stuff where, hey, I'm getting tackled, so I'm gonna fumble the ball forward, so the player in front of me can pick it up, run for a touchdown. That's gonna show you how anemic the offense was. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I think Harold Blood was trash. I think Noah was trash too. And I'm not even going to sugarcoat it, but at the end of the day, to me, I felt like had Lionel Hayes or Sam George been starting at quarterback, Southern would have been a SWAC championship team at that point. Because, another thing I remember too, when they got in a Heritage Bowl, who they played? I think they played either Hampton or Howard. I think they played Howard. And the big trick play at the time was, you throw like a screen pass to like one side, but behind the line of scrimmage. And then you set up a screen for the running back, the quarterback on the other side. And basically it's like a double pass. Instead of you throwing a post or throwing a go route on a double pass, you throw the screen to the opposite side. And they threw that to Marcus Jacoby. And I'm not going to lie, watching him run, I think the offensive lineman probably could have outran him if they wanted to. And, man, I saw Pete Richardson during the game. I watched it, but I taped it. We used to tape all the Southern games, all the Bayou Classic, whatever. And, man, Pete Richardson fussed at Mark Orlando so much on the sideline. I'm like, bro. And then, of course, like 2 plays later, you in position to score. He was rolling to his left. Instead of him stopping and planting and throwing, he tried to throw the ball on the run. He threw an interception to a wide receiver that was wide open in the back of the end zone. And Southern ended up losing in that Heritage Bowl. The Celebration Bowl now, but yeah. Desmond Allen was saying, I was in Jackson and heard Marcus Jacoby story back then. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I was saying, back then they didn't have high-speed internet, they had dial-up connections. So I don't know what paper Marcus Jacoby taught, whether it was, the Advocate or some other paper or whatever. My dad bought it. And them dial-up connections, they'll take forever. Adrian Cook said one thing we can say about him was he could take. Yeah, I'm gonna lie. That's one thing about him. I gotta give him credit. He could take a lick. I don't think he got hit as much as somebody like a J.C. Lewis. But I'm not gonna lie, Marcus Jacoby he used to take a lick. I give him that, you know. But he talked to one of the papers or whatever, and my dad bought it. So dollar connections, when you print something, man, it would take forever. So he printed it, and he was like, "Damn, I didn't even get the paper. Like, it took my money." So he did this at my uncle's house, which was like down the street, like maybe about 5 doors down. So he hopped in the vehicle, he come up back up the street, and then I'll probably say, dollar connections used to take forever. So either my aunt or my uncle called him like 2 hours later, and he was saying that basically, like, hey, your paper's finished printing. And he went down the street, man. It was like so many pages. So I'm like, man, you gonna read all that? And he said that he read every bit of it. He was saying in terms of like, the racial issues Marcus Jacoby had to go through, from Marcus Jacoby's side of things. He was saying that, he got a lot of death threats. And in addition to that, the whole, when they went to Nicholls State, of course I was pissed that night because I can't stand Nicholls State. My dad couldn't stand Nicholls State. He went to Nicholls State because, my grandmother, it was more beneficial to go to Nicholls than it was for him to catch a bus and come to Southern, whereas opposed he could walk to the head of the street and just catch a bus to Thibodeau. And at the end of the day, he was saying, basically, they put him through a lot. He got a lot of death threats, and then the players tried to sabotage him by dropping passes on purpose in Thibodeau at Nicholls State. And I think Coach Richardson knew that they sabotaged him, but he didn't punish none of the wide receivers. I mean, it kind of was, it was what it was. Adrian Crook said he got hit harder. I think it was because he looked like blue. All right. And Desmond said, I remember when Marcus quit the team, it was on Bet Sports. And yeah, and that's the thing about it was basically that's what he was saying in that article my dad printed. He was saying that, he had went through a lot and he just couldn't take it no more, you know what I'm saying? Salute to my brother Anthony Bolton. Salute to your fam. And basically that's what he was saying. He was saying that, he went through a lot. I'm not allowed. My dad is finished printing this. Hell, that ended up being like, I think if I'm not mistaken, the time he said like 40 pages. And I'm like, man, you gonna sit there and you gonna read all that? I'm like, if I gotta read a long book for enjoyment, like I'm gonna read it a little bit at a time. But man, that was like an ass of pages. The dollar connections took forever. I think it took like 2 or 3 hours to print everything from the Marcus Jacoby article. And basically, he said that he read it all. And he was like, man, he was like, yeah, he went through a lot, but I'm like, damn, you sound like you don't feel sorry for him. He was like, well, he was a trash quarterback. I'm like, yeah, he was. And then in addition to that, he was like, look, I went to Assumption, when they first integrated. At one point, he was the only black on the team. And then in addition to that, he went through a lot of that at Nicholls State. So he was like, hell, he's just going through a little bit of some of the stuff I went through. And I'm like, yeah, I could see your perspective on that. You know what I'm saying? And Darren Gaines, salute to you. He was saying is watching. Desmond Allen was saying, I remember Marcus' girlfriend broke up with him because he went to Southern. Oh, I could believe it. I could believe that for certain. That's why he was saying that, he endured a lot when he was going to Southern. He went through so much. For my dad to sit there and read like all like 40-some pages or whatever it was. I'm like, look, bro, I love Southern, but I don't think I can sit there and read all of that. Basically him, bitching and whining and belly aching and moaning and groaning or whatever. My dad was like, hey, I went through all of that at Assumption in Worths, and I went through a lot at Nicholls State. He was like, so it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? And, I'm almost certain his girlfriend broke up with him. Because in fact, I remember I can't think of this kicker name. I had a class with his son, white guy, whatever. His if I'm not mistaken, I think his girlfriend was going to LSU. I think him and her broke up after he got. I don't know if he got with a black girl, another girl, or whatever. And they keyed his car. I'm like, oh my goodness. the other girl that he ended up breaking up with. After he broke up with the girl he was going with, from LSU. So I'm like, dang, bro. So I don't know if he ended up getting with the girl from get back with the girl from LSU, but the other girl he got with, I don't know if she was black or not. So don't even ask. But I know he said the second girl he was going with, we was in class. I think they keyed his car, whatever. And he was saying, he read that whole story about I ain't gonna lie, my dad said that, and he read that entire story. And you got to realize, like I said, them dollar connections, man, they used to take forever to print. See, now with the high speed, print them off the internet, boom, 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 it print in like, 30 seconds, even a minute at worst. But hell, he said that, man, it took hours to print it. And like I said, they called like a few hours later, basically saying that all the pages had print. And he was like, man, I thought it was just like a few pages. I didn't think it was going to be like, whatever amount of pages it was. It was like, I'm like, man, damn, it looked like a damn book from Southern Bell. So, yeah, so it ended up being a big ass like article. So, basically he just talked about the struggles he had at Southern, that, the issues he had, whatever. In fact, Desmond Allen said his story on Google. Yeah, because in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was the one that told me he had passed. I didn't know. Basically, I think either it was Desmond Allen or somebody else. They were saying that both Marcus Jacoby and Matt Kornblau had passed. And I'm like, damn, really? He can't be no more than about 50 years old, and evidently he died like at an early age or whatever. I guess to both of them. And like I was saying about Matt Kornblau, like he was the nephew of George Steinbrenner, who was the owner of the New York Yankees. And, my dad was saying, like, damn, like, I hope that white boy not better than our white boy. And then the game started. He was like, damn, their white boy worse than ours. And, of course, Doug Williams was on the sideline mugging, this, that, and the third. Lionel Hayes had already transferred, whatever. And Doug Williams ended up becoming the head coach the next year. The first thing he did was, got rid of Kornblau and made Lionel Hayes the starting quarterback. I'm like, yeah, Lionel Hayes was better than Jacoby and Kornblau anyway, so it is what it is. But I'm not gonna lie, as bad as I thought Jacoby was, hell, Matt Kornblau was worse. And then he got hurt during the game, and a black quarterback came in, and I'm like, bro, man, some of the defense probably shouldn't have hurt this dude because the black quarterback probably better than him, but it didn't matter. As soon as he got in, Southern defense was weighing him out, and then Kornblau came back in. So, like, it was what it was. But at the end of the day, a couple people were saying, like, hey, coach, you need to get with C. Wells. Y'all need to do more content. These same stories I'm telling, I think me and C. Wells did a live stream together on his channel every week. We'll probably be there for like 5 hours, and have like a ridiculously long live stream like my sister had the other day. Sister Shower Ya, the way she had like this 6-hour marathon stream the other day. And I like chopping it up with SU, but I ain't trying to have no marathon long stream, live stream, but it is what it is, I'm getting ready to wrap it up in a little bit. And Desmond Allen was saying, yeah, that boy. Oh, I ain't gonna lie, Desmond Allen, he wasn't just trash, he was super trash. I'm like, man, and I thought Jacoby was like just such a trash quarterback, in my opinion. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know what C. Wells was saying, like, hey, he could make a couple throws here and there. But I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but at points, Eric Dooley asked Harold Blood to do more. And at points last year, Terrence Graves asked Noah Botton to do more. Marcus Jacoby didn't have to do as much. I mean, he had a savage offensive line. See the way they want to line up and pound the ball year before last. They didn't have that kind of offensive line that Southern had when Jacoby was the quarterback. And, you had a running back like Steve Wolf, even though I felt like he avoided contact too much for my liking. He still was a dog, you know what I'm saying? And then not only that, but you had a defense and you got, a savage leading that defense like Ricky Harvey. Come on, man. Like, those combination of things carried Marcus Jacoby, in my opinion, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, it is what it is. But I'm getting ready to shut down this live stream. I appreciate everybody that came through, rocking with me, showing some love. My brother Jared 11 Green, Adrian Crook. Hold on, I gotta show. I can't show that top one. Adrian Crook, my brother Jay Good, my brother Big Joe Townsend. Let's see who else. My brother Brent Fox, Adrian Crook again. Man, I just appreciate everybody that's been supporting the channel, that's been dropping through, showing some love. Darren Gaines, I appreciate all of y'all to the fullest. And not only that, but in the comment section, because this Saturday I got another one coming in terms of another Southern University top 10. So, give me some suggestions in terms of what type of Southern University top 10 y'all want to see. I have been working on a Southern University top 10 defensive backs, but I kind of getting stuck at the bottom of my list, so I kind of bypassed the defensive backs. I still got the list, but I'm still tweaking it, still working on it. Of course, just like my top 10 wide receivers or top 5 wide receivers list at Southern, you got the GOAT tier guys at the top, and then you got the Southern University P. Richardson era players to now, and then the bottom guys is the guys I'm debating over, because I knew quite a few defensive backs that came through Southern, so I'm trying not to let my personal relationship with people I'm cool with cloud who should be on the list. But that's what I've been working on. But any ideas for Southern University top 10 list, put them in the comment section. And in addition to that, I'm gonna do that Southern University top 10 Saturday. The top 10 list on Saturday, top 5 list, either one. So give me your suggestions. And in addition to that, there's any other topics y'all want me to talk about Southern University related. Man, I appreciate everybody, dropping through to show some love. Y'all go check out my brothers who were in the chat. Brother Jared 11 Green on his channel every Saturday, Southern Baller Show, 3:30 p.m. Central. I'm sorry, not every Saturday. I'm sorry, every Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Come check us out on his channel, Southern Baller Show. We just chop it up about football in general across the board, NFL, college, HBCU, all of it. You know what I'm saying? So come check us out over there. Sundays, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, the Southern Baller Show. In addition to that, go check out my brother Brent Fox on his channel with his show It's Just Me starring Brent Fox. Go check him out. Go check out the sister who had an excellent marathon live stream the other day, Sister Shawala Yah. She talked about the Fatal Fury coming up this weekend. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. In fact, I think I'm going to do back-to-back live streams tomorrow. So go check out the sister Shawala Yah. Also, go check out my brother Supreme Beast Boxing Talk Cadillac Red. Go check him out on his channel. And lastly, brother 7 Days Sports TV. He has 2 channels. His primary channel is 7 Days Sports TV. His backup channel is the No 304 Show. Go check him out. And speaking of the beloved queen, the Queen Shawa, y'all go check her out. She had a marathon live stream on Fatal Fury. I'm still listening to it, Queen. When I'm working on stuff, playing a game, whether I'm playing 2K or doing other stuff, I'm riding, I'm listening to it. I'm about halfway through, but I'm gonna get through it though. But because we trying to get your subscribers up, and we trying to get them watch hours up too. Oh, and I'm glad I pointed that out. Please like the live stream, share this live stream, and in addition to that, like, share, but subscribe also, because I'm less than 300 subscribers away from 1,000 subscribers. I'm trying to reach that magical, majestic 1,000 subscriber mark. So if you have not done so already, please subscribe. No, beloved, you do excellent content. I don't know if you noticed or not, but for sure, I'm definitely gonna listen to it, because I like some of the points you're making. And I'm not gonna lie, you cooking with Crisco on a lot of them topics. You know what I'm saying? I didn't really see, some of the stuff you were saying about about Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. and all that. In terms of the fight itself, we agree on that part. But some of the data stuff, I kind of see what you were saying, but I can see your perspective. But I'm gonna tap in and I'm gonna put in your chat. But yeah, peace and blessings to everybody. Again, for my hardcore members of Jaguar Nation, any show ideas, show topics that y'all want me to touch on, put in in a discussion, in terms of the chat box, in terms of, hey, Coach wants you to talk about this, talk about that. Like I say, Saturday I got a Southern University top 5, top 10 coming up. Also, I'm gonna talk about Fatal Fury myself. I'm not gonna do like the beloved sister, how she break it down all the way down. I'm just gonna, touch on like the top fights. She break down the entire card. I don't have no patience to do that, you know what I'm saying? But I'm gonna break down the Fatal Fury card on tomorrow. So I'm gonna have back-to-back live streams tomorrow. And then on Saturday, I'm gonna do a Southern University top 10. But I appreciate everybody that dropped through, that showed some love. I'll catch y'all on the rebound. Y'all have a blessed and phenomenal evening. Peace and blessings, and go Jags.